Summer, month 1. Dear Diary, it's hard to put into words how to start things off. Last night was hellish and terrifying. I still don't know what happened. I could hear the screams, feel the fire, and death all around. As soon as I heard the commotion, I immediately ran into my room and hid. Fear plagued me at that moment, and it still does. People are looking at the devastation that this raid caused. Who could have done this destruction? There are many questions, and I might ask around to gather any clues. I would say goodbye, but nothing good could come out of this. I will write soon about what I discover. As the young woman enclosed her journal and placed it on her side, with shaking hands, she turned around to the entrance of her home in disbelief. Blackened soot sprinkled the base of the worn wooden house up to its roof. She stood up, rubbed her eyes, and captured the scene in its entirety. Dead bodies strung along the dirt path, both old and young. Some were blackened as if they were set on fire, while others lay impaled by javelins, blood protruding from their corpses. She inched forward in shock as those she recognized ran past her in a panic. People huddled over injured family members as they winced in pain. "Papa, everything will be okay," one of the children yelled in distress as she rushed to usher other villagers to pick up her wounded father. She continued to stumble her way through the village and look up in a daze to the rolling hills in the north. The once tall, proud pine trees had transformed into scorched sticks. The grass that vacated the vibrant hills was torched, disintegrating into clumps of ashes. A gust of warm air against the young woman's face brought her back to attention. She shuddered as the smell of charred flesh filled her nostrils. The girl continued her way on the dirt path, where more death and decay seemed to reside in and around the perimeter of the village. She slowly turned to her right and began her walk towards the town center. The once intact public square, a haggard old woman sat on her knees crying. "What happened here?" the girl asked. The elder hag glanced up, her face streaked with tears and dirt. "Look around you, Rose," she cried in desperation. "Our homes are destroyed. People are dead, and my garden has been ransacked." The girl stood above the woman and looked at the garden. The plants and vegetation had all but withered, and succulents were burnt to a crisp. Rose looked to her left at the town center hall. All that was left were wooden boards and piles of ashes. "Is there anything they can do?" "Just go away! You can't help me with anything!" the wrinkly woman snapped. Sighing, Rose turned away from the mourning woman and went to check on the opposite side of the town center. As she continued her way through the town, the sight was more than devastating. Bodies lay crumpled among piles of ashes, and homes were irreparably damaged by the fires. She wandered through the wreckage until she reached a creek that was covered in soot. Rose knelt by the creek side and ran her hand through the soot-covered water. The ripples grew to reveal a clearer surface, and she watched as her reflection stared back at her. Rose had golden beige skin and darkened walnut hair. Her hair swayed in the ash-filled wind as she gazed into the dirty creek. Her reflected beauty was tainted by the soot-corrupted waters. She raised a shaking hand to her face and rubbed her cheek. Ash residue stained her skin. Frowning, she moved to a spot where the water was cleaner to wash her face. While cleansing herself, a young man's voice sounded behind her. "Rose? Is that you?" the man asked in disbelief. Rose spun around, her face dripping. Her amber eyes lit up as she released a wide smile. "Julian! By the heavens, you're all right!" She ran to hug Julian, and he embraced her in his arms. Rose nuzzled her chin onto Julian's shoulder and asked, "Is everything all right? Was your family spared?" Julian released her and cleared his throat. His lips quivered as he replied, "Yes, my sister and parents have survived this onslaught. But are you not yet aware?" Concern for Rose etching his features. "Aware of what?" Her tone shifted as she asked Julian. "Your mother didn't make it out alive, Rose. Her body's just outside of the town's entry point," said Julian. Rose stumbled backwards and soaked the information in. She waited for a couple seconds to respond. "Show me," Rose asked. The two walked past mourners and strolled their way to the sighting Rose's mother. The young woman finally reached her deceased mother and cupped her mouth. Her mother laid face up with her eyes rolled to the back of her head. In her lower abdomen, a blood-stained spearhead protruded from her gut. She was trying to flee, it seems, but I don't know the whole story. I'm so sorry for your loss. Rose removed her hand Her face twisted in anguish as she let out a racking sob. Julian came to her side and touched her shoulder. Then slowly, like a crescendo, her crying slowed and turned into giggling. Then from giggling into laughter. Julian stepped back to see Rose's tear-stained face transform into a look of insanity. I don't understand. Why are you laughing? Julian said, scrunching his eyebrows. Rose arched her back to release a final cackle. As she held her stomach from the strenuous noises, she let loose. I'm laughing because... As she tried to mutter the words, she elevated her neck upward at the sky, shouting, I'm free from this wretch! Julian looked at Rose's mother and back to Rose. He slowly walked back in an awkward fashion as people came to see the commotion. She turned around to the crowd, yelling, All this village has brought is nothing but misery. I know my place in this world, and living amongst the low life is not my desire. I'm free from this place. Rose ran through the crowd, and one of the bystanders itched his head, saying, That girl's gone mad. When Rose reached her home, she grabbed her diary and began to pack her belongings. She went into her mother's personal stash in her bedroom wardrobe. She began sifting through items to take with her on her new espoused journey of freedom. Rose noticed a secret painting shoved into the back of the wardrobe. As she reached and held it in her soft hands, the sketched picture displayed Rose's father and mother sitting on a rock with infant Rose placed on her father's lap. She crumpled the picture, throwing it on the floor. You just had to leave me with her, said Rose. She rummaged through the wardrobe and took a cloth tunic and wool boots. Rose undressed from her gown. Once her gown dropped, she twisted her head and reached behind her shoulder blade and touched the large area of puffed and scarred skin with her fingers, rubbing the bumps back and forth. She began to put on her new clothes and pack some more items into her leather backpack. She went to the kitchen to take some loaves of bread and fruits for her journey. Just as she was finalizing her supplies and started to walk out the door, Julian came back to her vicinity. What are you doing now? He asked. Rose smiled as she walked past him, patting him on the back, saying, I no longer have to pretend. I'm leaving this town, this destruction, and I'm leaving you. I'm free to do what I want, and nothing will stop me from accomplishing my goal. Julian looked at her with confusion, and he shouted back to her, Of course you leave when we are at our lowest. Do you even care what happens to us? Rose stopped in her tracks, turned around to Julian, and shouted back, Thank my mother. I learned it from her. With those words, Rose continued her trek towards a sign to her west in the distance. When she reached the sign, it read, Leaving the nation of Honko-Rorus, unmarked from here on out. Rose made her first steps outside her home territory. She took a deep breath and continued her journey downward from a hill to a river below. As Rose pulled out the map that she got from Mother's wardrobe, it displayed the neighboring countries. To Rose's south was Jagrin, divided amongst the Waxon's duchy and Jagrin countryside. To her northeast was Lithograd and its 3 major city-states. She took a closer look at the southern region and noticed a coastal city southwest of her position that caught her eye. She continued her way down the hill and saw a pack of mules, merchants, leading them up the hillside. Excuse me, do you know what this location is called? Rose asked. The merchants looked at the map and their eyes lit up. Ah, my girl! That destination is called Pearl Port, a lavish place with riches and pleasant weather, said the merchant. Her eyes sparkled. Oh, that sounds delightful. Thank you, sir. Where are you from, traveler? The merchant asked as he pet his mule. She looked downward towards the river. The new adventurer turned her head back to the merchant. Nowhere important. I'm wanderlust at the moment. The merchant and his friend laughed, and they responded saying, Then cherish it now while you're young and able to. Good luck on your journey. He tipped his hat towards her, and she let them pass with their mules. Rose excitedly began her adventure of escapism. She skipped down the hillside to accelerate her journey, to reach Pearl Port and live a lavish life.